All right, let's get into it. I have not posted a video in probably about a week kind of regarding the Call of Duty League stuff, just based on, there hasn't really been any other big rumors that came out that we haven't addressed. And I've kind of given my opinions as far as what I think the team should do and, who I think fits the best where and et cetera. So we kind of took like a week off, but today was the day. Like roster mania has kind of officially begun just based on it's the 3rd of July, which is the first day of kind of free agency here. So now these players are officially, if they did not get extended or have a +1 on their contract, and they are not currently under contract, then they are now free agents that are allowed to sign with whoever. So let's get into it. We'll start with the fan favorite with OpTic Texas. Sources are saying Pred and Drazah are the front runners to join OpTic alongside Dashy and Shotzi. I think this one's pretty concrete. So if you are an OpTic fan, you can go ahead and clap it up because this roster is going to be disgusting. There were rumors about a week ago that Envoy and Drazah, that OpTic was in talks with them. And then you had kind of what came out through the middle of the season where OpTic was trying to buy out Pred. They were told that they could buy out Pred from Seattle. And then Seattle came back after a couple weeks and basically said, no, we're not selling him. So I think it's pretty obvious that I think Pred is going to OpTic. Unless Simp was to, play more of a flex role, then I think a likely place that he would also go would have been FaZe, but we haven't really heard anything from that. And if we're hearing rumors now officially that roster mania has kind of started and these guys are free agents, then I would say that this is pretty concrete. And then I guess going back to Pred real quick, whether those rumors about Envoy and Drazah talking to OpTic a week ago was actually true or not, I will say I do feel as if OpTic probably did talk to Envoy and maybe said, hey, if we can't get this deal done with Pred, then we would like you to be our second option. And I think in this roster mania, if you're getting offered by OpTic, you're most likely taking that. I would say probably 95% of the players in the league would take that offer if they weren't already on, a top tier team. So whether they talk to Envoy or not, I'm just putting it out there that they probably talked to a little bit of everybody, but I could see them, have told Envoy, hey, you're our second pick if we don't get Pred. So if you are interested in coming here, don't sign with anybody until this goes through because we would like to pick you up. As far as what I think on this move, this roster is obviously disgusting. Pred, Drazah, Dashy, Shotzi. I think Drazah kind of proved that he was one of the best flex players over this season and last season. So Drazah, I think you get an improved guy with Drazah over Ghosty. And then Pred over Hook, you're obviously improved. So about 2 thumbs up for this move and kind of the trades. Well, not trades, but the trade-off that you get from your replacements. I will say, like I said, I made a long video on this, a week and a half ago, but just to kind of reiterate, I do think that with Shotzi being the face of OpTic, and he was kind of that young talent that was brought in to replace Scump once he retired, and be the face of OpTic. I do think that Envoy would have played better alongside him, just because Envoy, I think his game knowledge and game sense is really high, and I think he can do a little bit of it all, which allows Shotzi to kind of freely roam the map. I do think with Pred that you're kind of getting the same thing, where Pred is nasty, but he's also a guy that kind of plays similar to Shotzi in the way that you have to allow him to just do his own thing on the map. And I think Envoy would have, balanced that act of slaying alongside Shotzi, but then also being like, okay, Shotzi's making a route. Let me play closer to objective with my ARs to kind of like hold down the fort. So I think the ceiling is a lot higher with Pred. But I do think that inconsistencies will come. just based on them having Pred and Shotzi versus having Shotzi and Envoy. But I'm not here to really debate it. This team's going to be nasty. If they can't win with this team, then there's huge fucking problems that OpTic has. Moving on, we got Ghosty news. Ghosty turned down an offer from Boston Breach, according to the rotation. We're just going to go ahead and assume that this is true. I think the biggest thing here is just that if Ghosty's turning down an offer from Boston Breach, you would most likely think that he's getting offered by a better team. And I don't want to sit here and say that Boston Breach was this great team, but they did make champs. With all the movement that they did with their team, they were still able to kind of like battle it out with top tier teams. And they really slotted in as kind of like the upper echelon of that middle tier of teams. And, you know, while let's say Seattle Surge was a team that was better than them in that middle tier, they released their whole roster. So like, why would Dan want to go to that team? Like, at least Boston kind of has somewhat of a culture and players to like build around. So I do think that the biggest point here is that Ghosty is either being looked at by FaZe. He's either being looked at by FaZe. He's either being looked at who knows what's going on with Toronto. And he could also be looking at by LA Thieves. I think LA Thieves is like the most likely place that he would go. But you would have to think that if he's turning down an offer from Boston Breach, that there's more of an upper echelon team that already has some sort of foundation there that he would probably be going to. So that's the Ghosty news. Good for him. I think he got a lot of good gas this offseason as far as content creators within the Call of Duty League, and then also, you know, current and former players, you know, really giving him kind of his praise, which I think, you know, upped his value after being released by OpTic. Moving on, won't touch on this too much because I think this is just like an agent stunt, like for Priestha to get a little bit more money. But the rumors are coming out that Priestha and the New York subliners have been rocky, with one source claiming that Preston is being hoed by new contract talks. He's the only guy that we just really haven't heard much about from the champions and subliners. But I fully think that this is probably just like an agent move where maybe you put the rumors out there, and maybe, you know, Priestha gets other opportunities that then he brings back to New York to possibly get some more money. If New York isn't able to figure anything out with Priestha, that's going to be a really weird one. I also feel like Priestha isn't a guy that, don't get me wrong, an unbelievable talent, but if he goes into free agency, I don't know if teams are really going to get off course into what, you know, the direction that they're already pointing in. Like, I don't think if Priestha goes into free agency, like, I don't think FaZe is picking him up, if that makes sense. So this is interesting, but I think he'll definitely re-sign with New York. As stated, Seattle Surge did announce their departure from their whole roster. I still think that this is weird. Like, I feel like as a team, you'd want to keep one guy to at least have some input around, you know. Not to say that these are bottom tier players that they're going to be eyeing, but like, I think Sib is one of those talents where like he's a great talent within the Call of Duty League. And you say, hey, we're going to make you the face of this kind of franchise, and you tell us what you need or what you want. Outside of these top guys, like maybe Pred, or, you know, if Scrap's available, or whatever the instance is, you know, you tell me what you want to do, and we'll see what we can do, kind of situation. Or keep a guy like Mac. You know, I think Mac showed flashes of greatness. I think he was kind of thrown into a role that, you know, he did kind of all the dirty work, and he wasn't really able to go out there and play his game. So keep a guy like Mac around and build around that. Let him have somewhat of a say, or at least you're able to give him a name, you know, a list of 7 players, and let him choose from it. Like, I just don't really buy into this whole like let's just drop the whole roster. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Seattle Surge does moving forward, and more interestingly, what does Sib, Mac, and Accuracy do? I know Accuracy didn't have the greatest of seasons, but that's the Iceman, baby. Like, he's the guy that, you know, has been around. You know, maybe he can go to a team like Boston and get them back on track, and not, you know, his gameplay be secondary to what, you know, he's actually doing out there. But moving right along, this came out yesterday. Is that CDL Scrimintel tweeted out, I understand a possible team of 3 is Illy, Awakening, and Hook. And then today they tweeted out that being told by a few people that Standy is a possible 4th for this team. I do think Standy is one of the most underrated SMGs going into this offseason, just as far as someone that isn't like that top tier talent that's going to be swept up by FaZe or OpTic or LA Thieves. Like, you know, I think there's room for a team to kind of like build off a guy like Standy, just because it's been pretty known that he wasn't going to go to a top tier team. But this roster right here with Illy, Awakening, and Hook and Standy would be a pretty gross team. I think that their ceiling could be pretty high, but their floor could also be really low. So this would be a fun team. And then also with Illy, like, we just haven't heard anything. Like, he had his hand issues. He got dropped from OpTic. Like, we haven't heard anything from him. We don't even know if he's been playing the game. Like, I know there was rumors that he was playing with Arcitys a lot over the past few weeks. So, you know, it was stated that it could be rumors that Illy would go play alongside Arcitys at Gorillas. But this is a possible stack of players going to a team. I also think a big thing here is, like, just because 4 players want a team together doesn't mean that a team's going to pick them up. You know, like, you can't just go to Seattle Surge, for instance, and be like, hey, here's our 4, like, sign us. Like, it doesn't work like that. So whether this happens or not, I don't know. If it does happen, maybe you take a little bit of a cut as far as payment goes. That way you can ensure that this is your 4 stack for the team. But yeah, I'd be surprised if a team really was going to let their ego aside and just be like, all right, this is the 4 stack that we're picking up just because these guys want to play together. So we'll see. Moving on to the last piece here. Envoy informed Boston of his decision this morning that he was not going to sign with them, and that he is most likely taking the Toronto offer. I don't know what the hell is going on with Toronto Ultra, but they're kind of all over the place. And if this rumor is true that they are picking up Envoy, I truly think that Envoy would not be going to Ultra if they were dropping the pieces that they had that got them to champs. So if you didn't know, there was rumors that came out that they had, you know, financial troubles, so they were looking to sell Insight and Kleenex. They then rumors came out that they were going to place 2 to 3 rookies alongside Scrappy after they just made champs finals. So it was just like a lot of weird shit going on. That then created the rumors that, well, if you're going to sell Insight and Kleenex because of financial issues, you may as well just sell Scrap, and then maybe you could keep Insight and Kleenex. So it was all over the place. But I will say, if this is kind of like similar to the Ghosty news, is that, like, if Envoy is going to sign with Toronto, then obviously they're going to keep at least Scrappy, and then also one other piece. If not, just keep the roster that you have, and then replace Pixie with Envoy. So I do fully believe that puts all the financial issues and all of those rumors to bed. If Envoy is going to sign with Toronto, because there's no reason why Envoy would go to Toronto based on kind of the opportunities that he would have come his way for other teams if they weren't keeping Scrap or Inside or Kleenex. So that'll be a crazy team. They got a lot better if this is true. So all right, let me know what you guys think about the rumors. Let me know what you think about the OpTic roster, if that is true. If you have any opinions or your thoughts, maybe we'll make another video like addressing that if you guys do have anything. Yeah, hopefully within the next, I would say probably by the end of this week, early next week is when we'll get our news. Tomorrow is the 4th of July, so I doubt anything will happen on the 4th of July, but who knows? All right, we'll see you.